Hey guys, Afro Blue again. Now you can probably see behind me that the bookshelves are looking kind of empty now, thanks to the upcoming move. But don't worry, one thing I've not packed yet are the Sonic comics. Also wearing the Sonic shirt, it's time for the second part of that retrospective. Let's do this! So, when we left off, Metallix was looming over the skies of the Emerald Hill Zone, demanding the villagers hand over Sonic the Hedgehog. So, naturally, issue 26 opens with Sonic playing a Marxio Brothers game, and Amy seemingly having been kidnapped instead. Though, to his credit, Sonic does leave to save her immediately, and it is nice to see a Sega comic sniping at Mario. Upon arrival, he notes that the Miracle Planet, introduced to us last issue as a small planet appearing over Mobius once a month, has become metallic. He quickly spots Amy, who states Robotnik is trying to turn it into his base of operations, just before Metallix shows up. The next couple of pages gives us the comic's first great fight scene, with Sonic emerging as the victor, but Metallix reactivates and takes Amy to the Miracle Planet. Sonic's World does continue this issue as well, but we'll come back to that after we finish the Sonic Terminator arc. Part 4. Johnny, Porker and Tails arrive at the lake just in time to see the Miracle Planet disappear for a month, cutting off Sonic's backup. Not that Sonic seems to mind too much. The fight goes straight back into full swing until it looks like Sonic's met his match. A familiar blue blur strikes Metallix down though, and a pint-sized Sonic quickly explains that he has come from the future, shoves present Sonic into a convenient shrink ray, and hands him a time stone. At the beginning of Part 5, Metallix is fully charged and ready for the kill shot. Future Sonic tells present Sonic, best way to describe them I can think of right now, to run for it. This causes the time stone to take Sonic back in time, and then the stone disappears altogether. Sonic soon discovers the machine that turned the planet into metal in the first place, and with his smaller size, he goes into the machine, removes the time stone from within it, seemingly its power source, and the machine blows up, with Sonic running back into his own timeline. We're then treated to, and I kid you not, the exact same page from last issue. Okay, there's good reason for this, so I'll let it slide. Sonic doesn't notice any immediate changes to the world, until suddenly the planet goes back to being a grassy green paradise because the metal-making machine never existed, Sonic grows back to his original size because the shrink ray never existed, and Metallix disappears because apparently he was never built. I'm pretty sure that last one is going to cause continuity issues further down the line, but I have some issues with the time travel to get out of the way first. Clearly Nigel Kitching is using a linear timeline instead of parallel timelines. This is evidenced by the fact that if these were parallel timelines, Sonic changing the past of a different timeline would not alter the future of his own. So, if this is a linear timeline, then why aren't Sonic and Amy teleported back to Mobius, as she would have never been taken hostage, and the two would have never gone to the Miracle Planet? Also, if Metallix was never built, the epic Brotherhood of Metallix arc later down the line must be thrown into serious question. Also, why are these effects so delayed? According to linear timeline theory, the events of destroying the machine should have already happened, so this whole storyline should have been negated. But then the miniature Sonic wouldn't have existed to go back in time to destroy the machine to... It's the classic issue of if you go back in time and kill your grandfather before he conceives your father, then... This is exactly why I hate time travel. And yes, time travel will rear its ugly head in the future. As mentioned, through issues 26 and 27, Sonic's World recounts the events of Sonic 1, stating that, once collected, the 6 Chaos Emeralds gave off intense amounts of radiation, turning Sonic into Super Sonic for the first time, and teleporting the Emeralds back to the Special Zone. When Sonic comes to in a swamp, he meets Tails for the first time, having saved him from drowning, and of course the events of Sonic 2 take place. Issue 28, where the Sonic Terminator ends, starts a new Nameless Zone adventure called the Morbidden Hunt, which runs through to issue 31. Again, I wasn't a big fan of the Nameless Zone, and this is going to be a long video as it is, so I'm skipping over it entirely. Issue 29 shows us a story called The Sentinel. This story shows Sonic discovering an abandoned city underwater, Its giant guardian saves him from drowning and states that his people have long since left Mobius, before declaring his work is done and falling to pieces. Initially, this would be viewed as filler. Been around, 100 issues or so, this will become deadly important. Issues 30 and 31 introduce us to comic-exclusive Metamorphia, a recurring villainous shapeshifter. After her defeat in issue 30, she immediately returns disguised as the Hedgehog Cosmic for issue 31, where again she's quickly defeated. She's worth mentioning only for the fact that she does keep cropping up and does seem to have a few fans. Issue 32 has the filler story, The Unbeatable Foe, which is really unremarkable, and a Sonic's World strip called No More Mr. Nicebug, a three-parter that's ultimately inconsequential and runs through to issue 34. Thankfully, issue 33 has us straight back on track with Enter Knuckles. This is the first part of an arc that stretches through to issue 38 and encompasses Enter Knuckles, parts 1 and 2, Power of the Chaos Emeralds, parts 1 and 2, and finally Robotnik's Revenge, parts 1 and 2. I've decided to cover it as one story. In the meantime, all you're missing is the rest of Mr. Nicebug, and a Tails story called Zone Runner and the Flock, where the comic continues to try and give Tails credibility. A news report states that Dr. Robotnik has disappeared after the Death Egg was taken down. Apparently this happens in a summer special I've unfortunately yet to find a copy of. And Kinterbor informs the team that the Death Egg struck something before it could reach Mobius. Porker and Johnny think it might have been a legendary floating island, but Amy berates them, saying it's just a stupid story. Sonic and Tails take the tornado to investigate the coordinates and, surprisingly enough, find the floating island! I'm glad this comic gives Amy so much credibility. The next couple of pages are just Sonic and Tails exploring the island, but you should notice that Elson's changed the way he draws Sonic. Maybe it was to keep in line with the new sprites for Sonic 3. Who knows? We also get introduced to Sonic's force field. It doesn't take the duo long to find Robotnik, but as Sonic charges at the evil dictator, he's punched out in Knuckles' first and admittedly badass appearance. It quickly becomes apparent Robotnik has lied to Knuckles, saying Sonic stole Robotnik's Chaos Emeralds and has now come to steal Knuckles' set from the floating island. Him and Sonic have a battle. The fight sequences are actually getting pretty decent during this era of the comic, and Tails manages to capture Robotnik during the confusion. We now have an interesting situation where Porker Lewis, of all people, is trying to interrogate Robotnik. Knuckles quickly comes to rescue the Doctor. Robotnik seizes the opportunity and grabs Porker through the bars, holding him hostage. He demands that the Chaos Emeralds be handed to him. Sonic reluctantly hands them over in exchange for Porker's life, and it seems Knuckles found Robotnik through a tracking chip in Robotnik's tooth. Sonic and Tails give chase straight away and take Robotnik and Knuckles down over the floating island. We're now back where we started, with Sonic and Knuckles fighting. Sonic using his force field for the second, and if I'm not mistaken, last time in the comic's entire run. Sonic pretends to be trapped and lets Knuckles escape so he can see what Robotnik's up to. In the Emerald Chamber, Mobius's emeralds merge with the floating island emeralds to form a new, more powerful set of 6, and Robotnik wastes no time in trying to absorb their energy and become invincible. Despite his incredible power, he's out of luck. Knuckles didn't tell him he had the 7th emerald, the Grey and also the Control Emerald, giving Knuckles command over Robotnik's powers. Naturally, he gets straight into action and strips Robotnik of his powers and teleports him back to Mobius. To be fair to Robotnik, this plan works much better the second time around, but hey, we're getting way ahead of ourselves mentioning that. Naturally, Robotnik isn't best pleased, and now he knows where Sonic's secret base is. We open to him launching a full-scale attack. Meanwhile, Knuckles is assaulting the launch base zone, trying to eradicate Robotnik's presence from the floating island. Sonic and Johnny fight off Robotnik while Porker downloads the Kinterbor computer to a Mobius ring. Guess they don't have DVD-Rs or USB drives. As Grimer is taken hostage by Knuckles and falsely reports Knuckles' death to Robotnik. In Part 2, as Robotnik continues to assault Sonic, Johnny and Porker, Knuckles breaks in and takes Robotnik out of commission. The heroes then escape overground, where they have more room to fight the legion of badniks that accompanied Robotnik, treating us to one of the best single-panel pages in the comic's history. Knuckles returns to the floating island, and Sonic gets to the rendezvous point where Tails and Amy are waiting. They disguise themselves as a traveling circus for now, and continue forward. The next 6 issues are essentially filler. Following immediately on from Robotnik's attack on Sonic's base, Knuckles returns to the floating island and meets the Marxio brothers in their Carnival Night Zone, in a 6-part story that, whilst fun and well written, doesn't really make any permanent changes. There are 2 Sonic stories I will quickly mention. One is Sonic No More, where Grimer uses a gun to transfer Sonic's powers to Robotnik, and Sonic very quickly gets them back using that same gun. My issue with this story is that, according to Sonic's origin in this continuity, his sneakers developed by Kinterbor assisted his speed, and Sonic trained and broke the sound barrier before he turned blue, so this really doesn't make any sense. The other story, Badnik's Bridge, sees the gang learn that a new thruster for the Death Egg is being delivered to the floating island. They decide to intercept it, the plan being to blow it up over a bridge. Only Sonic gets captured, breaks free just in time, and then has to think on his feet to take out the transport on the bridge. But this was amazing. I wanted to see more stories like this. The gang working as actual rebels, planning ahead, using explosive charges, and being very Sat-A-M-y. Seriously, if you read any of the Sonic the Comic filler, make sure you read this story. We're now up to issue 45. Day of the Death Egg is our story. The Death Egg launches and, I kid you not, kills Tails before turning its guns on Sonic too. Psych! It's actually a simulation run by Grimer and a story written to make us fear the Death Egg. We also get Enter the Cybernik, running through to issue 47. Where another comic-exclusive character, Short Fuse, is introduced. Now, unlike a lot of the comic-exclusive characters, Captain Plunder and later Techno in particular, I like Short Fuse. Basically, a squirrel called Shorty tries to save his friends from being turned into badniks, so Robotnik turns him into a super badnik, a badnik that can never be freed. Thankfully, Shorty resists the brainwashing that comes with being made into a badnik. Pretending to obey Robotnik's orders, he leads a charge on the Emerald Hill Zone so he can free his buddies from their badnik confines in their own hometown. Robotnik is furious and decides to take Short Fuse out personally, having made an emergency override for just such a situation. But Sonic intervenes, saving Short Fuse. He offers him a place with the Freedom Fighters, but Short Fuse refuses, saying he will fight Robotnik his own way. In the meantime, issue 46 had given us the filler The Big Con, and issue 47 has started the next major arc, Mystery of the Sandopolis Zone. This arc runs for quite some time, and we won't be covering all of it in this video, but the stories are Mystery of the Sandopolis Zone, Parts 1 and 2, Countdown to Disaster, Parts 1 and 2, and then Disaster, Parts 1 to 3. And don't worry, while we're recapping this, all you're missing is the second Zone Runner arc with Tails. Really, it's not anything against Tails, but the Nameless Zone and Zone Runner stories just don't do anything for me. So, Sonic turns up at the floating island to survey the launch base zone from a distance. He quickly runs into Knuckles and... oh, great, I think he heard me earlier. Captain Plunder. The captain's brought a professor along who says there's a pyramid hidden beneath the sand and brings it up right under Sonic's feet. The Guardian sub-boss from Sonic and Knuckles comes out, and Knuckles quickly defeats it by sinking it in the quicksand, exactly as you do in the game. Plunder finds his treasure, but the lights go out, the ghosts of the pyramid appear, and Plunder legs it, the entrance closing shut behind him and sealing Sonic and Knuckles inside. The pyramid starts to fill with sand, but this is Knuckles' territory after all, so he simply opens a secret passage, and the two escape easily enough. As Robotnik gives orders to a new robot, Sonic and Knuckles find their way to the Lava Reef Zone, where the Death Egg is conveniently parked on top of the volcano. After defeating an army of Egg Robos, the pair rush into the Hidden Palace Zone, discovering the Master Emerald to be missing. You know the drill, guys. With no Master Emerald, the floating island will crash into Mobius. Sonic comments on how much bigger the emeralds have gotten, and Knuckles explains this is their natural state. When they were separated, they were apparently drained of much of their power. It doesn't take Red and Blue long to find the Master Emerald, though. The new version of Metallix powering up on top of it kind of gives its location away. As Sonic explains, this makes no sense. While Sonic says it's supposed to be dead, it goes even further than that. It's supposed to be non-existent. Metallix was supposed to have never been built following the events on the Miracle Planet. Though, to be fair, there is an explanation given for this in just a moment. Before we get to that explanation, however, Metallix teleports to the Sky Sanctuary Zone with Sonic and Knuckles in tow, knocks Knuckles out, and then states he wants revenge for the death of his brother. This would imply that although the original Metallix was never built, everybody remembers him and the events that took place. He also states that the Brotherhood of Metallix have already been constructed too. Again, seems like sloppy time travel if everyone remembers a robot that was supposedly wiped from existence. Ah well. Sonic is no match for this new Metallix and chooses to use the Master Emerald to become Super Sonic. After this, he easily beats Metallix, but also starts to attack Knuckles. The power of the Master Emerald wears off, but it was still a very risky move he was willingly taking. It's too late, however. The Master Emerald is aboard the Death Egg, and going by that rumbling, it looks like it's about to launch. What we've seen a lot of in these last 25 issues is that Sonic is arrogant, is cocky, doesn't tend to plan ahead, and that these traits can and will bite him in the arse. He's ultimately a flawed character, which makes him quite interesting and is something the comic will continue to handle masterfully. Join me next time, where we'll see not only the conclusion of their retelling of Sonic and Knuckles, but we'll also be introduced to Chaotix, and we'll start the epic Brotherhood of Metallix arc. You'd be mad to miss it.